Hey, what is up, everyone? This is news that actually flew under the radar for me, and that's probably because I don't really look at the bigger sites like, the Polygons, the Kotakus, and stuff like that. The shill sites, the ones that are garbage. But this is news that I hadn't even heard of, and I can't believe that it flew under the radar for me. I must have been just completely unplugged around the time this came out. But E3 2019, Konami surprises with Turbografx 16 Mini. Of course, this was 2 months ago that this article came out in June, so I'm way behind. But it's news to me. It's news to me, and I wanted to talk about it because I've pretty much talked about all the mini consoles that have either come out or been on their way to coming out, minus I think the NES Classic Edition. I think that might be the only one that I haven't talked about or did any kind of unboxing about, because that's the only one that really, even though that's the one that kicked everything off, it didn't really appeal all that much to me. But it's the one that kind of started the trend with everything. Now, prior to that, of course, other mini variations of consoles had come out, but that's the one that really kind of gained traction and made a real market for all this now that everybody is kind of like copying and making their own versions of it. And I didn't even know that Konami had the rights, had bought the rights to the console, or had bought out NEC or Hudson Soft or whatever. I didn't know any of that. So, but I guess apparently they did. If I'm wrong about that, please feel free to inform me in the comment section below, or if maybe they just got the rights to the library and the system. I don't know. But anyways, I digress. I'll go over this article here now. I'm going to be jumping through a couple of articles, and I'll go ahead and link them in the description below. But this first one here is from Bloody Disgusting, and I'll go over it real quick here. Late last night, Konami surprised attendees with the announcement that they're jumping on the retro bandwagon with Turbografx 16 Mini. Release date and price were not announced for the revival of an admittedly niche console in North America, at least. Now, for those of you that didn't grow up in the late 80s or early 90s, you probably didn't know about the Turbografx 16 until you might have seen videos about it either on YouTube or maybe seeing some of these gaming collecting channels that might have educated you on that. Well, I should say, if you lived in a rural area, you probably didn't hear about it, because the reason for that was because back in the day, what they did was NEC, when they decided to make the Turbografx 16 over here, they decided to go ahead and use the same kind of strategy that Japan did. Now, mind you, Japan's an island, so they could kind of get away with doing this. What they did was they only marketed the system in major cities. So I live in Orlando, so of course, major city. I was able to see commercials for it on TV. I saw it in the stores, and it was available. It was very expensive. Turbografx 16 was always a pretty pricey system for what it was, and keep in mind that this was also the first home console that included a CD attachment. And if I remember correctly, back in the day, the CD attachment for the Turbografx 16 was something like $300, $400. Very pricey. It was still new technology. It's something that wasn't all that commonplace. So just to get that attachment costed quite a bit. And the Turbografx 16, the business that it did, as opposed to like Nintendo and Sega, it just couldn't keep up. And part of that, I believe, was due to their marketing strategy of just really only promoting it and selling it in major cities, which was a big misstep. But it is what it is. A lot more people, I think, are familiar with it and know about it now because of the advent of the internet and things like that. So that's good. So the mini console will feature a faithful scaled-down version of the original Turbografx 16 design, right down to the smallest detail. The console will also have a quick save feature, various display modes, and come with one controller. A multi-tap will also be released for games such as Dungeon Explorer to allow up to 5 players. Now, if you remember with the Turbografx 16, it only had one port for one controller. You had to buy a multi-tap if you wanted to play multiplayer games, which is, one can look at that and say, well, that sucks. But the thing was, there was really a lot of one-player games for the system. There was some 1-2 player games. I think that they could have added an extra port for the 2-player games. If they could have probably done that. They could have probably even included a multi-tap if they wanted to. But I get why they're not. I mean, they're keeping it as authentic as possible. And originally, you only got the system with one controller anyways. You didn't get it with a multi-tap or another controller. So it's just another way for them to make money. So I get it. I get why they're doing it. It's no issue. The real question comes down to games. Konami has revealed 6 titles for the North American European version, as well as the Japanese version, more to be announced for each at a later date. The immediate downside for US English speakers is that Castlevania Rondo of Blood is on the Japanese PC Engine Mini, and and for the moment doesn't appear to be on the TG16 or Core Graphics. Now, of course, this was an old article. This was the follow-up article by Bloody Disgusting. Full list of Turbografx 16 mini titles announced, launches next March. So the release date is March 2020, but this was the good news, pretty much starting off with this article. It turns out that those looking forward to the Turbografx 16 mini won't have to snag the Japanese equivalent to play Castlevania Rondo of Blood. After all, in fact, apart from one title switch, the full list of 50 titles will be practically identical across the 3 regions. Now, the reason why there's so much emphasis here on Castlevania Rondo of Blood is because this was really the only home console Castlevania game that was never released here in the US. A lot of people actually bought the Japanese version for the Turbografx 16 CD. They bought it came out on that in Japan, the PC Engine CD in Japan. So a lot of people would either buy the Japanese system, or they would buy some kind of converter for the Turbografx 16 so that they could play Rondo of Blood and just buy import Rondo of Blood and play it on their system. So this was a game that was highly sought after. Now, Rondo of Blood has been released on virtual consoles. I believe that it was released on the Wii Virtual Console. I'm not sure if it was on PSN. It might have been on PSN at some point in time. But outside of that, the only other console release here in America was for the PSP. If you remember when the PSP was around, Castlevania Dracula X Chronicles, which had both Symphony of the Night as well as a updated 3D version, 3D graphic version of, or I should say 32-bit graphic version of the, was it 32-bit graphic? I don't know. No, it was a 3D graphic version of Rondo of Blood was put on there. And if you beat that, then you could actually unlock the original Rondo of Blood, which I believe is the only one that has been English translated, is the one for the PSP, if I'm not mistaken. And if I am, I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comment section below. So that has been really the only actual console release for it, has been through that that PSP set. So a lot of people, again, game that is highly sought after, and it's no longer on any virtual console, so I can see that as a big selling point for this. But let's continue on here with this article. On top of that, we have a release date for the Konami-backed console, the Turbografx 16 Mini North America PC Engine Core Graphics Mini, which is what it was called, obviously, in European countries. PC Engine Mini Japan will launch on March 19th for 10,500 yen, so that's about 105 or about $100 here US. All 3 versions of the mini console will be sold exclusively through Amazon Japan, with pre-orders opening on July 15th. So obviously they're already up for pre-order, which is great, which is probably another reason why this kind of went under the radar, because it's not going to be readily available at stores. It's only going to be available for purchase online and through Amazon. So that's probably why it didn't make the rounds as much, or I didn't really notice a lot of people talking about it as much, was because of this. And again, because it is a little bit more of a niche console, if you're not really heavily into gaming or history of gaming, or grew up around the time that this was a thing, you probably know nothing at all about it, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it was a great system. Fantastic, really underrated system in my opinion. I have one now as an adult. Would have loved to have had one as a kid. It was just too expensive back then. As mentioned, the mini console includes 50 games. The Turbografx 16 Mini and its European equivalent. Oh wait, I already read that. Oh no. I didn't read that. The only difference comes in the games offered by Japanese PC Engine Mini, which swaps Salamander for Tokimeki Memorial. Okay, let me go on so I could actually go over the list of games that it includes. So this is going to be for the Turbografx 16 release of it. So the American version of this, the American system, Alien Crush, or North American system, I should say, Alien Crush, Victory Run, Blazing Lasers. If you guys remember, Blazing Lasers was one of the pack-in games that came with the Turbografx 16 back in the day. The other one that, the other pack-in game for the system at one point was Keith Courage was the other pack-in game. Alien Crush, pinball game. I think Devil Crush would have been a better addition because it is a superior game. It's a much better game, but Alien Crush is fine. Newtopia, great RPG on the system. Dungeon Explorer. R-Type, one of the best side-scrolling shooters, not only on the system, but around that time period. Motor Rotor Power Golf Ease Books 1 and 2. Now that was a game that was on the Turbografx CD, so it's good to see that as an addition to this list. Fantastic addition. Ninja Spirit, another great game. JJ and Jeff, Space Harrier, of course, as you know, a fairly good arcade port for a system at the time. Military Madness, Chu Man Fu, Psychosis, Bonk's Revenge, pretty much all the Bonks games were good that I can recall. I don't recall a bad one. They were all good games. Parasol Star, a fun little puzzle game. That was actually Working Design's first game that they had, how should I say, the first game that they had adapted over here. And then Kadash was the one right after that on the Turbografx 16 CD. And both of those games are games, let me just say this too. A lot of these games that are on this list, Turbografx 16 games in the last couple of years have really skyrocketed. A lot of them are very pricey. You'll be hard pressed to find any really dirt cheap. They're pretty pricey, and games like this are pretty high on the list. Like Parasol Stars and Kadash, they're pretty up there in terms of price to just get the actual just game itself. That with no instructions or anything like that, the box, they're still pretty pricey to get. New Adventure Island, Airzonk, Utopia 2, Soldier Blade, Lords of Thunder, and Bomberman 93. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. The following PC Engine games in their original Japanese are also being included. Akumaju Dracula X Chi no Rondo, so obviously Castlevania Rondo of Blood. Aldine's Appare Gateball, Bomberman 94, Bomberman Panic Bomber, Cho Anaki, Dai Maka Imura, Ghouls and Ghosts, Dungeon Explorer, Fantasy Zone, Ginga, and I'm sorry, I know I'm butchering these Japanese names. Ginga Fuke, Densetsu Sapphire, Gradius 2, Jaiseiken, Necromancer, Nectaris, Nutopia 2, Ninja Ryu Kenden, Ninja Gaiden, PC Genjin, which is Bonk, Salamander, Snatcher, Star Paradeer, Phantasy Star Soldier, Super Darius, Super Momotaro, Densetsu, Superstar Soldier, the Kung Fu China Warrior, which is China Warrior, I should say, and East Books 1 and 2. Okay, so criticism I have here, at least in regards to the Japanese games, is them including the Japanese versions of games that they're already having the North American release of on here. I think that seems pointless. While I get it that this is a system that obviously is going to have Japanese games, so people that can speak both languages and maybe want to dabble in a little bit of both, they have that option of playing specific games either in English or Japanese. I get it, but I still think it's a waste. I still think, don't double dip on some of these games. I think it's completely unnecessary, because I still see that probably, I would assume that most people that are purchasing the Turbografx 16 Mini are going to be mostly English speakers at the end of the day. That's going to be the ones that are mostly going to be picking this one up. So why bother putting in the Japanese versions of games that you've already included the North American release of? I think that's a little bit of a waste of space, especially considering you're not putting Splatterhouse on here, which I think was a must game to put on here, because Splatterhouse, like I said, the only North American release for it on a home console over here, outside of maybe any kind of virtual consoles, was the Turbografx 16. So you're putting in the Japanese versions of Ease Books 1 and 2 and Utopia and a couple other games, when you could have put in just as easily just included Splatterhouse. And if you're going to put some other Japanese games, why not put in other games that hadn't previously been released over here that people might want to play, like Double Dragon 2. You could have put the PC Engine release of that here in the Japanese section of the games, and I think that would have been better. And you could have excluded games like China Warrior. I mean, that game is memorable on the Turbografx 16 CD as well as the PC Engine, but I think for all the wrong reasons. It's not a very good game. I mean, it's not the absolute worst game, but you could have gotten rid of that and maybe put a game on there like Vigilante. And you also could have, like I said, included Double Dragon 2 if you're going to put it, if you're going to include some Japanese games as well as North American games on here. So I think they could have, there's still some good games on here, don't get it wrong, and it's still, at the price tag, I still think it's worth it, all things considered. Although they're doing one other thing that I would criticize, and that's the fact that they're not including a power adapter, kind of like the PS Classic. They didn't do that. They just included the USB cable and not the actual power adapter. But I guess they figure by this point, just about anybody has a USB power adapter, so there's no need for them to include it, which is fine. You know, I'll have one for it regardless of which. But this is, I would say it's a solid list for the price. I would say it seems fair, but I probably would have added a couple things and taken out a couple other things had it been me. But it is what it is. There's still a lot of good games on here. Snatcher is another great one that they added on here. Superstar Soldier, great game. You know, the Ninja Gaiden, of course, is great. Ghouls and Ghosts. So there's still a lot of good games here that are worth the price tag, I think. And you know that a lot of people are going to find a way to homebrew this and hack it to be able to include even more games on it through either a USB or an SD card or whatever it is, however they end up hacking these things. But I'm okay with it. I won't say the list is lackluster. I'll say it's solid. I'll say it is solid, though. It's not as bad as the PlayStation. Like, PlayStation Classic is the only game list to date that I had a problem with, that I thought was very mediocre. This one is decent. This one's solid for what it is, and I am looking forward to getting a hold of the system. Now, it does, like I said, come out in March 2020. Pre-orders are available now on Amazon. And if you guys want to check out any of these articles that I went over, like I said, links are going to be in the description below. But what do you guys think of this release? What are games that you would have added? What are games that you would have taken out if you're a fan of the Turbografx 16? Let me know in the comment section below. Let me know what you guys think. Until next time, y'all know how it goes. The hunt continues.